So cool. Yeah, I gotta go pretty soon.
Back in the green room, and another big guest. I mean, you just keep getting big
I
guest after
keep
big
rolling them out.
guest.
Yeah, it's getting big. You know what I got to do? I just remembered. I got my buddy ARC hat. I love my ARC hat, but I got to take it off because Sierra College baseball coach Ryan Stevens, our guest today, and I don't want to start any controversy with him. I don't want to get any rivalry going. I want it to go smoothly.
Well, it's going to be hard because I've known Ryan Stevens his whole life.
Yeah, that's true. I do. We've known him from the Potters from about the last 5 or 6 summers. A great manager. He's decided early on he likes baseball and he likes bossing people around. So I got to talk to him about that and find out what's going on with that.
Well, and then we had a whole couple of years with the Ryan Stevens show. So
Oh,
this is kind of like you've done this before with him, haven't you?
absolutely. He's a tremendous guest. I kind of threw him some questions over the course of those 5 summers to see how he would deal with them. He never had a misstep. I think I might try to trip him up today.
Well, please do because he's in there and he's waiting for you.
All right, well, time to go.
go get
Coco, I
him.
got to go see Ryan. So you can follow me if you want. Again, I get a warning again. This is a very long hallway. It takes very long time to get down here. But Ryan Stevens on my way, and I took my hat off, so don't worry about it, buddy. Oh, there he is.
Coming to you live from the Stone Studios, it's The Phantoms Talk Show, filmed in front of a live studio audience of one.
Admired you as been Mr. Basketball.
Yes, we'll talk about that, Jerry.
And certainly I have no gender reveal. I've been more or less a man as far as I know.
More or less, I think,
time.
is the key.
Yeah.
What exactly are you the GOAT of? Is it prep reporting? Is it high schools? Is it college? What are you? You're definitely the GOAT. But what of?
Well,
what's too far for mom to drive? No. And I want to get outside because I had one of those who goes, I think Fullerton's far enough away that mom can't come on a Thursday.
A bar, restaurant, whatever it may be, something to find.
I like how you go lessons or working at a bar.
It's one or the other. Yeah. It's one or the other.
They're like, really didn't pay much attention to me, so I thought, well, maybe I can make Tom laugh, and maybe I'll get on the country show.
This week's guest is Ryan Stevens. And now, the guy you've all been waiting for. It's the Phantom.
Hello and welcome to the Phantom Talk Show. I'm Phantom, and my guest today discovered two things basically early in life. Number one, he loves baseball, and number two, he loves bossing people around. And he's put those two together and kind of made a career out of it. Ryan Stevens, our guest today. Ryan, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, not a problem. Absolutely a joy to have you in here. And we'll talk about the love of baseball in a little bit, but I wanted to ask you about the second part. When was the epiphany? You know, you coached at Sierra College, you obviously managed the Potters, and you're working out at William Jessup now. When was the epiphany to you said, I want to be in charge of one of these things. I want to run the show.
I think it happened later in my college playing career, probably. Just understanding and training with guys and kind of working with kids at the time and understanding that I knew what I was talking about at the time, and I knew that I could apply it, and I also knew that I'd be a player coach first and not one of those, yelling coaches.
Right. That's the thing. You define yourself as a coach, and you didn't want to be that.
Correct. And you know what? I've had a bunch of relationships I've met through playing, and then it's just, organically grown through coaching, and it's been awesome. And so I think it's been a blessing in disguise to get where I'm at now, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And we'll kind of go back and look over how you got to where you are now. But where you are now is William Jessup University, and I think you did softball at William Jessup, and now you're doing stuff with the baseball team, right? And William Jessup, a huge deal going Division II now. That's massive. So how is that affected? I mean, is there a lot of excitement on campus, and how does that affect you guys in the baseball program?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I think it's a great opportunity for Jessup University to switch over to the NC2A Division II. We're going to have some new opponents, some new traveling dates and stuff like that, and I think it's going to be super good for the community. You've seen Jessup as a whole develop slowly on campus and slowly spread out and be bigger and bigger, and more guys talk about it. And, this is really going to take us to the next level. And just being there, over the last 5 years with softball and now growing into baseball, that change from NAI to Division II is such a big thing because when you're going to recruit kids, right, most of the time that's the first thing they ask. Oh, what division are you? Usually it shouldn't matter, but unfortunately it does, and it's something that they can hold on to. So bringing in more talent, bringing in higher end talent, seeing it grow from the start to the finish is going to be awesome. We're super excited about it, and it's definitely a buzz on campus for sure.
Absolutely, with all the sports programs and everything. But let's go back. Full disclosure here. You and I met about 6 years ago or so with the Lincoln Potters. But you and Stones McCoy, the boss here at Stones Radio Networks, the guy who tells me everybody I have to interview, you guys have known each other a long time, and he's the one who always tells me you got to ask Ryan about his dad. That's where he found it all. So we finally have the time. Let's go into that. Tell me about your dad, about his playing career, and how it informed what you do.
Yeah, I think, I have 2 older sisters too that played softball. Dad instilled to me at a young age. Mom, super athletic, played sports, ran track. So I don't think we had a choice but to play sports. When it comes to baseball, Dad was heavily involved, played locally at Jesuit High School, played 1 year at AR, was drafted in the first round of the composition rounds at the time they had then.
Right.
They put him into be a catcher. At AR, and that's what he got drafted at. So he learned it pretty late. Drafted by the Braves and played in the minor leagues for about 5 years before moving up to AAA and having a couple spring training stints with them. And so he's a lifelong Braves fan. Instilled that into my sister. Somehow I walked away a Giants fan. But yeah, I think at a young age, it was just having someone that knew baseball at such a high level, instill that into me. He was hard on me back in the day, but I think it's one of those things when you're looking at it, it's something that kids these days probably lack. It's a little bit of discipline, a little bit of hard work, gets you to where you want to be. We're such a entertainment-driven society now. It's good to see kids get out in the field, and we used to play wiffle ball growing up.
Absolutely.
And go out to the cages, and we wouldn't leave until dark. And it really helped me develop as a baseball player. And he was a big reason why I ended up choosing coaching. He coached me since I was little, all the way up until my last year of high school. So I had him around a lot, and he was a big influence on my baseball career for sure.
So he played, 5-6 years in the minor league. So was he a guy who, was kind of ruining the day that I never got my big chance, or did he just enjoy the experience and bring a lot of that enjoyment back to you guys?
I think it's twofold. I think he tells us about all his experience and everything he learned and how good it was. And then also, it's one of those things that if you have a dream, to pursue it even harder, because he was kind of on the cusp of making the big leagues.
Yeah, he's right there. Yeah,
and there was actually talks of trading him. His GM at the time was Hank Aaron. I don't know if you guys know who Hank Aaron is. He was okay at baseball, but that was his GM at the time, and they valued my dad so high that they didn't want to trade him. They needed him as a backup, and it was one of those things. If he sticks it out a little bit longer, he probably would have made it. But I will give credit to him. He was, dad first and family first.
There's a break point there, huh?
We had my oldest sister. He was only 22 years old, and he had to make a decision. Go back to school, finish, and start working and support my family, or, keep playing and grind out and see if they can, live penny to penny. And, I'll give him credit. He chose the higher road and became a dad and a family to us. And, so I think there's a little bit of regret there at times, but I don't think he traded anything for what he's become.
So when you got started in baseball, where did you go to high school?
I went to Del Campo High School.
And you played at Del Campo. Were you a catcher?
I was when I started, and when I finished, I was a center fielder and a pitcher.
Oh, look at that! Okay. Well, usually, the common conception is the fact that catchers make the best managers. Like point guards and basketball coaches. So that's why I thought you'd at least start as a catcher. Obviously, you have catcher in your family, but so center field and pitching. How does that inform the way you went into coaching? How does it inform the way you coach?
Growing up, I think my whole life I was a catcher pitcher. I think when you grow up that way, it's you stick the kids that are decent behind the plate that can catch and be serviceable, and then if they throw hard, or luckily for me, I was big at a young age, so I played pretty at a higher level than most at that age, and catcher pitcher was kind of what you did. It was either that or shortstop.
Yeah.
And my body build was not a shortstop at the time, so catcher pitcher it was, and I did that all the way up until high school. When I got into high school, my sophomore year, it was one of those things that you have to love to get beat up behind the dish, and then also keep performing.
It's a tough gig. It's a very tough gig. Yeah,
I give the catchers a lot of credit for sticking that through, and for me, it just wasn't that fun. Constantly getting beat up and then having to go hit and then go pitch, and I kind of got burnt out on it. So at the time, I moved around and played first base my sophomore year, and then to center field my senior year. So I kind of moved around. But for me, that versatility really helped me in the coaching, because you kind of learned a little bit of everything. So that kind of helped the managerial position, trying to understand each group of players and where they come from and what they're feeling. And the catcher is what makes me throw great BP.
So if you had a kid who said, I want to be a catcher in Little League, and you went out and bought him an expensive catcher's mitt, and stuff, and he went behind the dish and lasted like 3 pitches, and then decided he didn't want to be a catcher. I'm not supposed to. I mean, you wouldn't be mad at him then that he went out and bought this new catcher's glove that never got used and still sits theoretically in your garage.
I think it happens to some of us. Maybe it sounds a little personal to you, but
I didn't want me.
yeah,
to
I don't
sound
know.
that
It just
way.
maybe sounds like that. 'cause
Generally,
I know you
that's
have a
what
kid.
happens to
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
But no, yeah, it happens, and I see it. I have a kid that's 8. We coach 9-year-olds, and I think we have a kid that just started trying catching, and he bought a bunch of gear, and
Yeah.
who knows, 2 years from now, he might not even use that gear again. And it is a lucrative sport. It costs a lot of money to play, but at the same time, you got to support those dreams and hopes of every kid that wants to do whatever they want to do until they figure it out, because we don't all have it figured out.
Okay, so you played at Del Campo. Then, a lot of people, first of all, playing high school sports, varsity at any level, any sport is great. But you took it even further. So you played at Sierra College then?
I played at Sac State out of high school for a year, went back
Okay.
to Sierra, and then finished at Sonoma State. So I was on that 3-school plan, but it was good. I met a lot of people, met a lot of coaches. Wouldn't trade any of those experiences for anything. Sac State really made me grow up fast. I think I had it all figured out coming out of high school until I got there.
And you didn't?
And I didn't.
Oh, gee, that's a
didn't.
shocker. Yeah.
And as you grow up, you kind of figure that out. But, I didn't, and I needed to do a lot more, student first and really taking care of your body and getting in the weight room and whatever it may be. And I didn't really realize how important all that stuff was until I got there, and that really introduced me to what it was really like to be a grown-up. And going to Sierra just made me that much better, and finished at Sac State or Sonoma State, and like I said, it was a great experience.
And I was going to talk about this a little later, but you brought it up now. So the community college athlete, that's the age that you work with a lot, with the Potters, and obviously it's when you were at Sierra, and with William Jessup, a little bit older maybe. And I don't think people understand how the community college athlete kind of gets, I think, undervalued, because as you just said, it's the first time after you leave high school, if that's the route you go, that's the first time you really discover what the next level is. It's kind of the wild, wild west out there a little bit, because you don't realize how talented the kids are at that level and what you have to do. And as you say, maybe that's the first time that kids are starting to realize, hey, I've got to do a little bit extra if I want to keep up with everybody.
No, absolutely. I think if you look at California junior college baseball, it's one of the best in the country. And it's why they have their own state championship, and they're not in the national championship that the other JUCOs play in, because I think California won it about 10 years in a row, and they're like, okay, you can just have your own.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, if you look at the Big 8, which I know you guys are familiar with, you look at every single team in there, they have 5+ guys on each team that are going Division I and going to the next level and growing into great baseball players. And when you look at like talent pools around here, you can go to any of those schools and pluck guys to play at Jessup, and they'd fit right in.
Absolutely.
And it's really neat to have so close to us. And I think it's definitely a stepping stone for the kids coming out of high school. We've said that to a lot of kids when I was at Sierra recruiting. How important it is to go to junior college and figure out your undergraduate and try to grow up a little bit before you go into the big stage, because I'll just be honest, not everybody's ready to go D1 out of high school. It's definitely a big change, and it's very independent and on your own, whereas JUCO's a little bit more high school, where they'll baby you along the way and kind of help you get to where you need to be and understand what that looks like and how much work it puts into to actually be a college baseball player and not just an athlete.
Yeah, I think that is. I think some people, it sounds like you were saying they need to be spoon-fed, but it's almost less like a slower thing. It's more gradual rather than just being dumped into a college campus, whether you're an athlete or you're not an athlete. So you played ball, you played at Sierra, you played at Sonoma State, and you come back and you've got all these influence, which has got to be great for you at that time, because you've had all these different coaches and played for these different programs, and then you decide that hey, I want to get into this. And how did that work out? Where'd you start that process?
So right when I graduated Sonoma State in 2010, I reached out to Sierra. Rob was probably one of the most influential coaches I had over the years in college, and I just told him, I said, hey, I've lived the dream of playing as long as I possibly can. I have no interest in playing independent ball or pursuing it further at this point. I was very set on the dream being, if it was organically drafted or whatever it may be, I wasn't going to go after that. I was going to try to take my talent of coaching and training players and try to go somewhere and do that. And so my first call was to him, and he was elated. He loves when players come back to coach.
Absolutely.
So it got me excited, and he kind of gave me the kick in the butt to get started and coach right away. So I don't think there was much downtime of playing to coaching. It was within 3 months I was already back at the fall at Sierra coaching. So
Yeah, but you kind of were even. I know you got out, you graduated college, so you're 20, 22, maybe 23 years old. Still, that's a pretty harsh realization you come to. So I'm at the end of this rope. This is as far as I can go. I've been doing this since I was a kid. My dad did it. I'm doing it as a kid. But it sounded like you made a pretty quick turnaround to saying, okay, now I'm ready to go into the next phase. And that's kind of something we've talked about is what you have to do with athletes of that age too. You got to go, okay, you've reached the level that you can get with your talent. Now it's time to learn how to play the game.
yeah, sure. I think it's one of those things that because of the experience I had with my dad and stuff like that, and understanding what that looks like at the next level, was I good enough to play? Sure, I could have played it beyond that. I think when you get to that level, it's all about who sees you and who vouches for you. And if it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. And I think for me, understanding that at a maturity level that I did, I knew that I wanted to be a coach, and I knew I wanted to help kids get to that point. And I think at that time too, any regret I had playing or not doing or what I did to get me to that level, I wanted to put that on kids and show them that, they could be good enough to keep playing if they do these things that I didn't do, or what I didn't take care of. So very experience oriented, very player first. It's really hard to go back as a 22-year-old and coach 18, 20-year-olds because you're so close in age. But I think once they understand how good of a coach you are or how you talk to them, they understand, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. At least I'll listen. But I've never changed from the moment I got out of college to now of how I deal with players.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what makes them gravitate towards me when I'm coaching, is because they know I'll be as real as I can with them and I'm not beating around the bush.
And when you got started at Sierra, did the coach put you with a specific responsibility, or were you just kind of did a little bit of everything?
No, he put me as hitting coordinator right away. I did really well at Sierra hitting. It was one of those things that they had a lot of other guys there, but hitting was kind of the main focus of what he wanted me to do. And so I had to learn fast on how to coach different guys and different talents. And
you got to be very adaptable, I would think. Yeah,
absolutely. And batting practice is one big thing. If you can throw BP, you can coach college baseball. So
no, don't say that, because Stones throws BP, and now he's all of
fine.
a sudden he's got a new career.
We've seen it. He does. He has. I don't think he's lost.
He has.
I've put him in pants, and I know he's been in pants a couple times. He has not lost. So the guy can coach. He can do something.
Yeah, and you're going to hear about it for 2 months afterwards too. That's the problem. So you started out as the hitting coordinator then?
Yes.
And moved up the ladder, so to speak, or kind of like
Yes.
just kept getting more responsibility?
Yeah, each year you kind of get something else thrown on your plate depending on how committed you are, because a lot of times in JUCO there's a lot of coach turnover. Especially at Sierra, a lot of our coaches move up or decide not to do it. Realistically, there's not that much money in JUCO baseball, especially as an assistant coach. So you're constantly finding other things to do, whether it's lessons, working at a bar, a restaurant, whatever it may be, something to find.
I
a way
like
to
how
make
you
money.
go lessons or working at a bar.
It's one or the other.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. Very rarely is it an 8 to 5 and then that, because your games are during the day, you're practicing at an odd time, so you don't really have time to do an 8 to 5. So it was one of those things that you kind of got to grind it out and work your way up. And as I grew in the program, it was hitting coordinator and recruiting coordinator. It was Ryan Evangelo, who's there now, took off and was the Yuba coach, so I ended up being the third base coach. And you kind of get elevated as you go. And it's something you see in the major leagues too. Coaches kind of gradually move up and get bigger roles from the minor leagues all the way up. And at the college level, there's no difference.
And was it a situation where you kind of like always knew this is where I'm supposed to be as far as comfort level? This is what I enjoy doing. It wasn't a situation where, this is kind of tough. I got to work this job. I got to work that job. It's not that easy. But it sounds like you kind of knew that's where you were supposed to be.
Yeah, it's one of those things, you understand it if you understand it, and you've been around it long enough to get the grind of it and where you're trying to move up to. And your ultimate goal is always to be a head coach or move up at some point. And I think I knew what that took. And luckily I have a supportive wife that understood the same thing. She comes from a college sport, so she gets it. But it's something that's a dinner conversation every time. It's, you're constantly doing this, you're doing this, when is it, when is it about this or the family? And, obviously recently it's been a year and a half now, me not doing Potters, but I think a lot of times you just look at what you can handle in life and what you can't. And, I needed to be more of a dad, so I kind of stepped away from that role. But when you're looking at my day, it's 6 to 6, so it's a little bit different than others. But, I think for all my kids, it's really good too, because they get to come out and get more relationships with players and whatever it may be, and they love it. So I think it comes down to the grind is worth it, is really what it comes down to, and it's been awesome.
Now, when you came to the end of your tenure at Sierra, was that when you came over to the Potters? Was there another thing that you were going to do, or was it because you wanted to go to the Potters? How did that happen?
So when I ended my college coaching career with Sierra, I had a new job I just took on with Wilson Sporting Goods, which is now Louisville Slugger Innovation, where we design all the bats. They asked me to be a full-time employee and be the player insight specialist and senior technician for slow pitch design. And at the time, you don't really understand what the hours look like, because that's
a nebulous title. Yes.
So I didn't want to overcommit. So I told Rob I was getting out of coaching to be a full-time worker and go from there. And not even 6 months down the road, summer came, and we saw the Potters come into town. And me and my son, at the time he was 2, caught a game, and I was like, man, this is awesome. And literally 2 months after that, Ray came calling in with Clifton, and hey, do you want to have a meeting at your work? And I said, yeah, sure. Like, what's it about? Like, oh, we'll talk to you when we get there. So I know you just got done with coaching, but we really want to, to come out and do the managerial job for the Potters. And this was within, 6 months of me not coaching.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, it's been, I got to figure out what that looks like timeline wise. And the moment I brought it up to my wife, she's like, do it. You've been miserable not coaching, just do it. And so, here we are, 7 years later, 6 years of those me doing the Potters, and I'm back in baseball at Jessup. So,
and how did doing the Potters, how did that, how was that an evolution on what you started at Sierra?
It was kind of the full fruition. It was working your way all the way up to being under the head coach, and then, finally being the manager of something or the head coach of something, and kind of overseeing operations and writing lineups and taking wins and taking losses with the, the grunt of them. And it was really cool to see it come full circle. And my experience with the Potters was awesome. I wouldn't trade it for a thing. I am so blessed to come across the people of Lincoln, come across the people and management, and then also all the players that I got to coach over those 6 years. I still talk to almost all of them at some point, and it's something that's so special to me that I am so blessed that I got that experience, because honestly, it kind of put me on the stepping stool where I'm at now. It's hard to see that when you first start, but being the associate head coach and working under Trevor at Jessup now, I don't know if I get there unless I have certain of these networks or communications. So I'll be forever indebted to them for what they did for me as well.
Yeah, I want to ask you about a couple of Potters a little bit later, but I do want to mention, I think that Stones and I, one of the first things we noticed about the Potters under your tutelage is that you guys had a real identity, kind of like a never give up kind of identity, and also like a community team identity. And that's got to be, I'm sure we're not the only people who've ever said that to you, so that's got to be kind of a nice compliment, and nice for you to hear that, when you think of a Ryan Stevens team, you think of a team that never gives up and always works together.
Yeah, no, I think we value relationship in the clubhouse, and also, working for the guy next to you and family first. And, it's one of those things that, you explain to him from day one, hey, you might not know the guy next to you. You might not even like him, but you're going to play hard with him, and you're going to like him when he's on the field. I don't really care what happens when they leave the field, but once they're there, they were family and they played hard. And, I told them, I said, if you're not here to win and you don't want to win, I said, then why are you playing sports? At some point you want to develop your game at a high level and compete. And I think that's why we're here. So you got to kind of buy into the guy next to you and really compete no matter what happens. And I said, it's something you learn in life too. If you're not competing in life and you're not competing in your job, you're never going to go anywhere. You're going to feel stagnant. So I think that's something that we really pushed on those guys. And it is a huge compliment for people to notice that. And same with you guys just watching. But I do pride myself on the fight of teams and how to never give up in life and never give up on the field. And it doesn't matter if it's 8-0 or 10-1 or whatever, you have a chance. You still got a bleeding chance if you have outs left. And that's something we prided ourselves on for sure.
And working with Sierra as a part of the staff, I imagine makes you realize how important the staff is. I know that you kept some of the same guys around you when you were at the Potters all 5 summers. Staff continuity was a big thing with you.
Yeah, it was huge. It was huge. When you have those relationships that, they understand you on the field, they understand you off the field, and what you're trying to do in the process, and how to make that thing go in one direction. It's really huge to keep that around if you can. And, like you said, I was extremely fortunate to have guys that stuck around with me, and put up with, my lows and my highs. And, each of them offered something different every year, every summer. to help us grow and win games. And I'll be forever grateful for all those guys that stuck with me and kind of bought into what we were trying to do for that summer club.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the Potters, like I said, in a minute. But I want to first, you've been in a couple of different stops, coaching, and at Sierra and playing and everything. I just want to have you mention a couple of people who have informed the way that you coach, maybe mentors, if you will. You kind of alluded to a couple of people, but shout out a couple of people who've informed that the way that you do your job.
Yeah, we talked about my father earlier. He's a big influence on how I coach and or how I don't coach. We've had our disagreements too, but I mean, I've learned a lot from what that looks like and on the field. And Rob Wilson's probably a huge one for me. He's been in the baseball community now, 27 plus years, 25 of those a head coach at Sierra and other schools. And I think what I learned from him the most was structure, but also just the grit and the grind of everyday work and embracing it, and playing with passion and all that stuff. And it was never a boring day at practice. It was never a boring day on the field with him. And that passion and that fight really uplifted the clubhouse and the dugout. And I think it's one of those things that you wouldn't trade it for anything because you don't really know where you'd be if someone was just sitting there watching. When you hit a home run, it felt like he hit a home run,
right.
And stuff like that. When you made a big play, he made a big play. And to feel special like that on the field, it makes you want to run through a wall for a guy. And I think that's one thing like he really transpired in my coaching career is just being excited and being, naturally excited for plays and being kind of like a kid again, and actually enjoying the ups and downs of, winning and losing and not just being mediocre.
Right. Well, we'll talk about the Potters, but before we do that, you're at William Jessup now. You're associate head coach. Tell us a little bit about the program out there.
So, I transferred from softball over back to baseball. We transferred in 16 guys this year. 9 of them actually wore orange and blue at some point for me and the Potters. So it's been really exciting stuff to get guys back in town and playing here locally for us. Last year we all talked about it as a staff, kind of a letdown year for them, and moving in the right direction and changing the culture and getting us, back to the conference championship, back to a regional, back to the World Series, as quick as possible. And I think with us transferring into D2,
yes,
it was a win or nothing year for us. And I think we brought in a ton of guys that are a lot older, that are, mature, ready to win now. And I think, for our guys, it's been great because every inter squad is a full out competition and guys
crazy,
are battling it's awesome to see because it really truly feels like we're actually already in games with how much talent we have on the field. And, I think it's only going to grow itself the more years we're there together and the transfer from NAI to D2.
That's going to be insane. And you still play at McBean Stadium, the William Jessup team, so local Lincoln fans can come out and see you again at work. Okay, so we got to the point where, I met you about 6 years ago when we came on to do the Potters games and you were the manager. We kind of started there at the same time. Meteoric rise for you. I don't know so much for us, but, there's so many guys over the years, 5 years, almost over 200 players, and you make connections with a lot of them. And, we can't shout out each and every one, but I picked out a couple of guys, mostly the OGs, that came at us and mostly with a local connection. Then I have one wild card. We have to start, obviously, by shouting out the first family of the Potters, the Garcias, with Isaiah and Eli and Ray, because, without them, nothing ever happens. But a couple of other guys. The first guy I want to say is from Lincoln High. And I remember when my son was in high school, he played with this guy. And when I heard that there was a Potters, I said, why don't they ask Charles? And so Charles Middleton played, I don't know, parts of 3 seasons, something like that. Just a great kid, came out there and played for you. And I know you enjoyed having him. And what a ball player, Charles Middleton.
Yeah, you talk about a guy that when he first got with the Potters to where he left, it wasn't the same player. And I think he truly understood growth. He had hard work. I know his dad instilled that football mindset in him. He was a tough kid. But he was a heck of a baseball player, and it's one of those things when I first saw him, I didn't really know if he could play defense, to be honest.
Right.
It was very sporadic in the outfield. His routes were not efficient. His arm was just okay. And then the day he left me, I said, man, he might play for a long time. I was like, he's really grown on me as a player, as a leader, and then also just how well he played in the outfield from the day I saw him to the last day I saw him.
Well, that's one of the things, that's one of the things that I love about you and your style. You told us, that first year, you say, I like to move guys around because when they get to the next level, sometimes they can't play the position they played in high school, no matter how good they were. They need to have that versatility. And Charles was maybe the first example of that we saw with the Potters.
Yes, he was. We moved him around because we wanted the bat in the lineup. But he did play some third. He played some second, just to move him around to
Right.
see what it looked like. But I think that was, like I said, it was huge for him to move around and get a little bit more athletic ability, understand that it might not be set in left field for the rest of my
Right.
career. If I can hit, I might be able to move around. And you see that, all the way to the big league level still. Guys get moved around a ton to find a bat in their lineup. And it's the same thing we do at Jessup right now. We're going to find a way to get the best lineup in there we can, and we're going to have to move guys around, and they're going to have to be comfortable playing different positions.
And sometimes they maybe resist that a little bit in the beginning,
Sure.
and you say, well, look at Charles. I mean, Charles went on and played at UOP. He went on and played, I think, in Louisiana for
Southern Alabama.
Yeah,
yes.
Southern Alabama. So a tremendous career. So he was one of them. The next guy I want to mention went to Del Oro, and as far as I can remember, he was still at Del Oro when you put him out on the mound. The left-hander Jake Frederick always impressed me as a guy so mature beyond his years because you guys put him in many difficult situations. He always seemed to come through, and we interviewed him a bunch of times. Just a great guy.
Oh, he's awesome. And, you talk about, size being, your biggest issue.
Right.
That was his biggest issue. He's an undersized guy, small arm, but, if you talked about his heart, you'd think he's 6'7", throwing 98 miles an hour because he'd get on the mound and compete every time he was out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, he was crafty enough to get a bunch of outs for us. He didn't care when we threw him in there, if we started him, if we relieved him. And that's another kid, too. He slowly developed and kept getting better, and he was at Sierra, and then he ended up going D1. And, to see that kind of stature and that arm go D1, it says a lot about, who he is as a person and his work ethic. And, he was one of the greats for sure.
He was fantastic. He would be in my Hall of Fame, my Wall of Honor that I keep trying
Absolutely.
to sell them, and they will not buy it. My third guy is it's a guy that every time we talk about him, it always makes, I think, both of us smile. He comes to us from Placer High up in Auburn, and actually one of the few guys that you and I both coached at one time because I coached him in third grade basketball. Rad Thomas, the big right-hander, always seemed to just – he's a little bit out there, but he always seemed to fit in with you.
Yes, Rad was literally the dugout leader every time he played for us. You can't match that kid's energy. Everything about him is affectious in the dugout, and it really spread throughout the team. It made guys play relaxed. They had fun, but they also played with a lot of energy because he was constantly on top of everything. And, I think his biggest crutch was, when he got into games during the college season, he struggled. For some reason, when he was with us, he just was a lot more comfortable, and I think that says a lot with the coaching staff of just having confidence in a guy and telling him to go out there and get outs instead of saying, "Oh, if you don't, walk a guy, you're
Right.
coming out." And you see that a lot these days. It's a lot of pressure on guys, man. They're fighting for their life, they're fighting to keep playing, and if you tell them that, it's like it's a failure mindset, right? And Rad was one of those guys that when he went in, you just said, "Hey, go get him. Just go get some outs for me and do whatever you can to get some outs." And you'll see that a lot with the Potters where we bring relievers in and really ride them out where the fans are probably going, what the heck? This guy's walked 3 guys, hit a guy. It's like, yeah, but if they don't learn here, when are they going to learn? Because they're not going to learn at college. They'll be pulled before they even get out. So, I think Rad falls into that line, but he was great for us, great teammate, great dugout guy, and it was awesome to have him around.
Yeah, I was the guy that whenever you saw him, you brought a smile to your face like Schmitty did, like Craig Schmidt,
Yep.
Another Lincoln product. And finally, I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if he's the best player that you ever coached, but he's certainly up there. We called him the natural. For some reason, he kept coming back to the Potters even after he got worldwide acclaim. Daniel Susak was a Potter for, I think, parts of 3 seasons. It must have been just a pleasure to be around him to coach Daniel.
Yeah, no, Daniel's an awesome kid. If you look at the Buster Posies of the world, Daniel's right up there with him. He walks in the clubhouse. He has a good presence about him. Good kid, always does the right thing. He's tall in stature and, big-hearted kid, but he's always respectful. All his teammates respect him, so he's doing the right things. He works his butt off, and that's why he's so good. It's not something that just came naturally, and all of a sudden he got drafted in the first round. It's
Right.
something he worked his butt off for, and he has a great family, great support cast. His dad's awesome. His family, his mom, his brother, they're always around supporting him. And, it was really special to watch someone of that caliber keep coming back to us and saying, we want to play for you.
Right.
And I think that's accredited to what the Potters were doing as a whole and also our staff. But it was just super, it's just, for me, it was heartwarming. You got a guy that's a
Absolutely.
legit first rounder. Everybody knows it. It wasn't a secret. He's starting to get USA Baseball this and, top prospect, and he's going off at Arizona, and you just know he's someone special. And he says, "Nah, I don't want to go to the Cape. I want to play with the Potters." That right there is
Amazing.
a testament to everything we're doing here, and it should be a testament for everybody that's a prospective Potter coming in.
And also, as a byproduct of that, you mentioned it. This is a message out to everybody who's the big man on their own campus. When you have a guy who's the best, who still comes in and works the hardest, that's such an example for the rest of your club.
Yeah, it sets the precedent of what we're supposed to be doing. You're here to develop, you're here to get better. And when the guy like that walks in, it definitely stops, and people look around and like, oh my gosh, that's Daniel Zusak. It's like, yeah, but he never felt that way, and he never made people feel that way. Once you got to know him, it was, oh yeah, all right, it's Daniel. Like, what's up, Zeus? Let's go hang out. So it was really natural and casual for him, and he never expected people to, lay down for him or whatever. He wanted to push people and make them play harder, and I think that's what made our team so special when he was around.
Well, finally, I mean, there's a lot of talk these days about, the state of baseball. Is baseball dying? Is baseball getting a resurgence? What exactly is going on with baseball? I can't think of anybody better to ask the question to than you, who's around baseball all the time. What's your take on this, if you will, the state of baseball now? Not only, at the professional level, but also in the levels that you coach.
Yeah, no, I think, let's just start from the bottom top. I mean, you got young kids that are playing out there. It looks like they love the game. It looks like it's one of those things that might be coming back. I think the whole let them play thing where the guys are kind of being themselves on the field at the major league level. Where,
right.
Pimping home runs at some point it's a good thing. Some points it's not. But I do like the character, the charisma, because it makes kids excited to watch it instead of just sprinting around the bases and like, oh, that was cool, you hit a home run. They don't really see all that. They see everything
right.
else. And I am totally okay with it. If it brings excitement to the field and the young kids, it's awesome. Do you see overusage of kids that are really good? Yes, we still see that at a young age, which is super sad to see. You got kids throwing 100-plus pitches in a weekend in 2 days, and they're 9 years old. It makes no sense to me. And it could be why kids get turned off by baseball at a young age. But as for, college, I think with the pitch clock, certain rules about the dugout, certain rules on field, disengagement rules where you can only pick off a certain amount of times. I'm a little old school when it comes to that. I think you should let the game come naturally and the fluidity of it come naturally. I don't think we need to force the issue. I get it. Because you get fans that aren't used to baseball and they want to see a game that moves along. But to me, it's completely changed the whole outlook of what college and pro looks like. And it's also a stat-driven thing now. So they want guys to steal bases, so they make a disengagement rule. They want guys to hit home runs, so they force them to pitch on time.
Yes.
So, I think it took a lot away from the natural game itself. And I think baseball was a beautiful game as it was. And I don't think they needed to really change it. Big bases, totally get it. Prevent injuries.
Sure.
Guys don't step on each other. Who really cares about that? But making guys throw at a certain time or making them not be able to pick over, I think it just takes away from the sweetness of the game. And, I'm hoping at some point they kind of to reverse some of that and kind of make it more
pull back a little bit. Maybe,
and understand that, pitchers need to have their time and hitters need to have their time or whatever it may be. And, let's not go to the robot umpire or whatever it may be. I think baseball's so natural with mistake and, success. I don't think it needs to change. And, I'm kind of concerned the way it's going in the major leagues right now, just the way they're talking about things, trying to, move things along and really outsource the whole natural ability of guys to make calls and stuff like that. So I think replay's fine because we're human. We're going to make big calls that affect games that need to be changed. But, strike zone's such a opinionated thing and guys have different looks at it. And, you guys have been around me enough. I don't always agree, but I also think they're doing a great job. So, it's one of those things that, I hope it stays a little more natural than it has been.
Ryan Stevens, you're the best. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been a
appreciate
pleasure
you.
talking to you, Ryan Stevens. Thanks to Ryan Stevens for joining us. Thanks to Stones McCoy behind the glass. You're watching the Phantom Talk Show. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.